Yeah, thanks a lot. I always great to be back in Columbus. Always look forward to calling Ohio State games, and an opportunity to do game day is always special. I think we've been to Columbus now more than any other place that we've been around the country. Been obviously huge moments that the show's been there to witness, and now to be able to call the game instead of at night. I guess essentially doing 7 straight hours of a lot of fun. Just looking forward to Ohio State's off to really not off to trying to finish up a magical year. And they've got a couple big hurdles left before they potentially get to Indianapolis and potentially into the playoffs. So it'll be a lot of fun to get in there and see how good.
All right, we'll go to a Bill at the Columbus Dispatch first, and then we'll go to Angelique after that. Go ahead, Bill.
Hi, Kirk. Angelique, just know you're behind me. Remember that. I have 2 questions, Kirk. First of all, how's Zach doing? Is he liking it at Ohio State, and does he see a path to play eventually? And I also want your thoughts on C.J. Stroud as a Heisman contender.
I would tell you that Zach is absolutely thrilled. He's had a ball. He is a glass half full kind of guy. He sends. I kind of stay out of all this with all my guys, and he'll send me proactive texts for whatever. Just excited about it. He's got a really good room that he's in with Kevin Wilson.
You're breaking up.
Is be kind of a guy that he really looks up to, as far as a guy that came in there in a very similar situation and has worked himself into contributing and playing. The great thing for me is, like, I was over there this morning and afternoon doing a feature on the 3 receivers, and when I got done, without even asking, these guys are saying stuff to me about Zach, about just what a good guy he is and how much they appreciate him, and that just makes me as a dad. And these are from players, CJ, like, as I was talking with him, he's like, man, love having Zach here. And he doesn't need to say that to me. He's just talking about him as a person. And when the older players are saying that about a young guy who's just trying to prove himself, that's a cool thing. As far as Heisman, I don't follow the Vegas odds. I hear from the Bear that he's, I think, a front runner at this point, or right there. And I think both he and Kenneth Walker are right there, having a chance to both be considered, I think, 2 of the top 3, along with Bryce Young. So, as you know, Bill, this is the most wide open Heisman race I think we've ever witnessed. Nobody's really taking control and kind of being the guy. So, yeah, I think with the platforms and the stages that he'll have these next 2, potentially 3 weeks, he's got a chance to have an exclamation point to a really good year as a first-year starter.
That's right.
Sure.
Okay, we'll go to Angelique next, followed by Patrick Murphy at 247 Sports. Go ahead, Angelique.
Kirk, I was wondering, I'm sure you've seen the stories about the deal that Michigan State has apparently ready for Mel Tucker. And I was just wondering, do you think this ups the ante for coaching salaries going forward? I mean, $9.5 million is in the works for Mel Tucker. And do you see this spiking salaries going forward?
I think, don't you? I mean, I think that's kind of how it works. I remember when Steve Spurrier or Bobby Bowden, I can't remember, late 90s, early 2000s, got $1 million a year. And I think all of us were like, wow, these coaches are starting to make, serious money. And it went from $1 million to $5 million, it seems like, in just a few years. And I think a lot of people thought there'd be a cap at some point or a ceiling to it. And I'm not one to judge whether they deserve it or not deserve it. I think your question is very relevant, because Mel Tucker's still climbing the ladder, really, still trying to prove himself as after Colorado last year and what he's done at Michigan State. And here he is, potentially, because they don't want him to go to LSU or wherever else it might be, potentially getting a whatever, I don't know what are the numbers, 99.5 million or whatever is being reported. Number one, good for him. Number two, yes, it will definitely. I mean, if you're Ryan Day's agent or anybody else's agent who is an established brand, I'm sure you're going to call your agent and say, wait a second, we've been going here for a while and doing pretty well. If he's making that, what's that mean for me? So yeah, it's no different than in your business or our business or coaching profession. So yeah, if that deal goes through, that'll definitely be interesting to see the reaction from agents who represent other coaches.
It is different in our business though, Kirk, and newspaper. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Okay. I'm sorry. Well, you guys now, you're TV stars and reporters, so you're everywhere now.
All right, we'll go on to Patrick Murphy, followed by Dan Hope at 11 Warriors. Go ahead, Patrick.
Hey, Kirk, good to talk to you. I'm sure you've heard Ryan Day talk recently about March Madness, comparing the season and how the Buckeyes, have to take every week as its own. As a guy who played at this program and at college football, and you travel around the country each week, you see this. How difficult is that for a program to do? Obviously, Ohio State's managed to do it week in, week out for the last few years here, but how difficult is that really when you look at it from a grand scheme of things?
It's the biggest challenge I think that these college players have, because what I've seen, Patrick, over the years, it's almost impossible to bring your fastball 12 straight weeks. I mean, you're going to have that game against whoever it might be, and you're going to take your eye off the ball, and you're going to bring your B- game. And that's when you're vulnerable. That's when the other team is going to bring their A game, and it's good enough that day to upset you. I mean, we see it every week. How many unranked versus ranked games have we seen where there's upsets? So I agree with what Coach Day is saying. I agree with what any player might say about that. I've lived that. My senior year, we lived that. 1 week we were told we have no chance. I mean, we could have taken on anybody when we played Syracuse because nobody thought we had a chance. We went out there ready to just kill them. The next week we played Wisconsin, and guys were sleeping on the bus on the way to the game because they didn't respect Wisconsin. And so I lived it. I understand it. It's very easy to get motivated when it's a nationally televised game or everyone's watching or everybody's telling you can't win. And then the next week you're vulnerable, an early kick, half empty stadium. I mean, we see it all the time. So yes, it is without a doubt one of the greatest challenges, especially the elite programs face. And I feel like it's most challenging in the weeks where you're not playing a heavyweight opponent. It's that game where you look at the film and you think, oh, we're going to kill these guys. Next thing you know, it's a 7-point game in the fourth quarter. So yeah, I think that's the real deal, not just for Ohio State, but teams all across the country.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right, we'll go to Dan Hope with 11 Warriors, followed by Marcus Hartman in Dayton. Go ahead.
Hey, Kirk, you mentioned that you were doing a feature on the receivers this week. I'm curious, as somebody who's been following college football for a long time, how does this group compare to some of the other great wide receiver groups you've seen?
Man, Dan, I mean, there's been some great, Ohio State has had some great groups, but I don't know. And I'm not trying to exaggerate because it's the most recent, but I don't think, and not to mention what's underneath them with the young guys that are coming up. Ohio State, known for their ability to run the football for generations, and they still are. But damn, I mean, these wide receivers, they're going to have, I think they've had 5, you tell me, you probably know it. Is it 5 1,000-yard receivers in their school history?
Yep.
Jackson's one of them, and we might potentially have 3 on this team alone, and a 1,000-yard runner. I think I asked the Ohio State staff today. I think that's only happened maybe one other time. Fresno State did that back in 13. But if these other 2 receivers end up going up and over 1,000 yards, I mean, think about that. 5 in the history of Ohio State football. All these great receivers. I mean, you could name 10 right now that were all Americans, and they've only had 5 1,000-yard receivers, and this team might have 3 on one team. So just when we think Ryan Day and his system have done all they can do, they continue to raise the bar, and in this case, with the first time starting quarterback who's a Heisman front runner at this stage of the season, and CJ Stroud. So he's figured that part of the game out: recruiting, offensive skill, quarterbacks, calling plays. He's as good as there is since he's been the coordinator and head coach at Ohio State.
Thanks, Kirk.
Okay, we'll go to Marcus next, followed by Jacob at the Lantern. Go ahead, Marcus.
Hi, Kirk. Thanks for doing this. I was curious what the reception has been like for your book, maybe in particular if you'd heard from people back home, Centerville, Trotwood, thereabouts.
Yeah, I appreciate you asking that. I've been very, very touched, and I don't want to say shocked, but just overwhelmed, I guess would be the best word, with the reaction that I've heard from people. It's real scary to not just talk about football and game day and the job that I do, but to open up about my family and just talk about being a dad and not having all the answers and making so many mistakes and continue to make mistakes and living through divorce and as a kid, and having babies that were 2 pounds each, who are now 21 years old. And, there's just different aspects that you really don't share much of that with. And so my hope all along was that the book would resonate with some other people that maybe have been through their own trials and tribulations. That's what I've been really touched by, is how many people have reached out. And, one of the initial ones was Buddy Bell, a guy who used to play for the Reds and was a manager in MLB. And I just can't tell you how many people who've reached out, sent me notes, tweeted me things. I've been blown away and beyond humbled and appreciative of that.
Okay, we'll go to Jacob next at the Lantern, followed by Chris Solari at the Detroit Free Press. Go ahead, Jacob.
Hey, Kirk. I know you mentioned earlier about how Ohio State's finishing up the season, and it has 2 Michigan teams these next 2 weeks. And I know coaches try not to look ahead, but next week looms the return of the rivalry and how it hasn't been played in over a century. So I'm curious, just from your perspective and your place in Ohio State history, what are your feelings about the return of the rivalry game next week?
God, can't wait, man. Just cannot wait. It's like, for me, that game, I'm from that generation. I don't care what the records are every year. I just love to see the uniforms on the field together. That makes my year. So when you throw in the potential, if they both win this weekend, you throw in all of what will be at stake. Holy cow. I mean, it's like hitting the jackpot. I mean, it's what you dream about if you're a fan of those 2 programs. I don't know. I remember in 2006 calling the game. I'll never forget Bo passing away on Friday, number 1 against number 2. I mean, it was just like, it was Ohio State was up big. Michigan came storming back. I think it was like a 42 to like 38, or it was a high scoring game. And it was just so much on the line. So like, you're literally on the edge of your seat every possession, every play, because the game itself, and then what was at stake when number 1 was playing number 2. And depending on what happens this Saturday, if they both win, here we go. It's not just Ohio State that has so much on the line. Michigan, of course, would also have an opportunity to not just try to beat Ohio State after all, that they've dealt with, but also have a chance to get to Indianapolis. I have to ask Angelique, I don't think they've been to Indy. Have they? They've not been to Indiana. I mean, that's shocking to think that. And here they are a couple weeks away from having that opportunity. So yeah, man, we're all doing what the coaches tell us. We're focused on this weekend. We're doing what we're supposed to do, but you cannot help to just start to kind of peek ahead and get fired up if they both win about next Saturday. That's, to me, I always get a lot of grief from people because I cheer for Michigan as a fan. Forget about being a broadcaster, just as a fan. I've always been taught by my dad to cheer for Michigan. Non-conference games, bowl games. He was big on they're representing the Big Ten. He was friends with Bo. He just brainwashed me to be that way. And so the main reason is he wanted everything on the line when Ohio State and Michigan played each other. Like, let's all beat everybody and then let's go at it for 60 minutes and see who the better team is. That's the way I was trained. That's the way I still look at that game. And that's what I hope for every single year. The fan in me. That's what I want every year.
Thank you.
Get me all worked up already thinking about that game. I'm kind of focused right now on noon Saturday.
All right, we'll go to Chris in Detroit, followed by Ian Kress at WLNS. Go ahead, Chris.
Hey, Kirk, I wanted to ask you about that team that actually is this week, Michigan State. First of all, Michigan State's gone down to Columbus and won some big games in the past 2 decades. I guess what has to happen there? And secondly, can you give me a comparison on Kenneth Walker to who you might think he looks most resembles and potential for the next level?
Well, it's funny. I was at Alabama. I had to actually do a feature yesterday on Bryce Young. So I did the 3 receivers today, and I did Bryce Young yesterday. And I was with Coach Saban when I was on my way out, and he asked me where we were this weekend, and I told him we were coming to Columbus for Michigan State, and he kind of smirked, and I said, "Yeah, man, 1998." Yeah, I said, remember that game? And we started kind of reminiscing about Rolando Hill and Cedric Irvin and just the way they played that day when nobody thought they would win. And then you think about the 15 game. I called that game. And Tyler O'Connor, I believe, was the quarterback that came in. And again, that was arguably Urban Meyer. I think it might have been his best team. He won it all in 14, but that 15 team was dangerous. And most of those guys were back from that team. And there's no way Michigan State's going to beat them. Here they come. And it was drizzly, and Michigan State just did just enough. Last second field goal, boom, it's good. And Sparty gets out of there with another upset. So you're right. I mean, we've seen this happen before when the odds makers say, oh, it's a 3 touchdown game. And then Michigan State comes in. This Michigan State team, as you know, Chris, I mean, they're just pesky enough to come in with a chip on their shoulder and want to kind of hang around for get into the second half and all of a sudden look up and it's a 1 possession game and get themselves to believe. That's what they're going to try to do on Saturday. As far as Kenneth Walker, man, I don't know. I mean, Le'Veon Bell would be an easy answer. I'm picturing Le'Veon Bell as a pro, more with the Steelers. I just see patience. I mean, he's not as tall as Derrick Henry, but his stiff arm reminds me of Derrick Henry, the way he punishes people when they come up to tackle him too high. Talking to Mel yesterday, I was really happy to hear how he's attacks the weight room. And he said he's not just kind of big. He said, dude, this guy's rocked up. His greatest attribute is his humility and how hard he works in the weight room. And that, from an intangible standpoint, reminded me a lot of Derrick Henry. So he's not as long and upright as Derrick Henry, but the physicality and the way he uses that stiff arm could very easily remind you of that kind of back.
Okay, we'll go to Ian next, followed by Matthew Spurrier at WSYX. Go ahead, Ian.
Hey, Kurt, earlier in the week, Mel Tucker had said he's not in the shootout business. And obviously with Ohio State's offense, high scoring, do you envision this having to be a shootout type of game, a lot of offense for Michigan State to come away with a win?
And I think there's 2 ways that Michigan State makes this game competitive. The first is they possess the ball. They frustrate Ohio State. They convert 3rd downs. They keep CJ Stroud on the sideline. And they whether they're kind of an up-tempo team. So it's not that they're intentionally necessarily chewing clock, but they're converting on 3rd downs. They're scoring in the red zone, and they're keeping Ohio State. The best defense maybe is their own offense. Like that if they win this game, that could be a factor. Second thing is that they just say, hey, we're on the road. Nobody thinks we can hang in this game. We got a great running back. We got a great offensive line. Let's run the football. Let's get them to come up and have to defend with their safeties against our run. And then let's do what we've done all year with Taylor Thorne. Let's throw the ball downfield with Jaden Reed and company. Let's hit some big plays Let's try to score with these guys. Let's show them our offense can score on their defense. So it's either a high scoring game where they're tick for tack with CJ Stroud and Ohio State's offense, or it's they keep Stroud and all those receivers and TreVeyon Henderson on the sideline and just try to eat clock and take the air out of the ball. Those are their two ways. If they make this game competitive, those are the only two ways, I envision it.
All right, Kirk has until 2, so we're going to try to get to as many questions in the next couple of minutes as we can. We'll start with Matthew Spurrier, and then we'll go to Colin Gay at the Scarlet and Gray Report. Go ahead, Matthew.
Yeah, thanks, Bill. It's Matt Spurrier is actually Clay Hall. I'm using Matt's computer today. Maybe you just got into it there.
What do you have for us, Matthew? What do you have for us here?
Mr. Spurrier here. Yes, thank you, Mr. Herbstreit, for the time. Can Michigan State, which has struggled on offense, stop this juggernaut who has struggled on defense, stop this OSU juggernaut on offense?
That's what I was saying. They're either going to have to keep the ball away from Ohio State or just try to score with them. I mean, on paper, it's hard to imagine that they're the worst pass defense in the country, not the Big Ten, the country. And now you've got to go against what we were just bragging about with Stroud as a Heisman front runner. These 3 receivers that are all going to end up over 1,000 yards, Henderson in the backfield. I mean, this is a tough offense for anybody to stop, let alone a team that's really struggled to rally to the ball. They've given up a lot of yards after the catch. I mean, if there's one area they've got to try to play better, it's leveraging the football and not letting Ohio State's receivers get out. That's one area. I'm sitting here on a Thursday. You never say never, but it's unless they get to Stroud, and they've been very good at that. They've cranked up the pressure. They can get sacks and they can get to the quarterback. One area Ohio State, I think, has done an extraordinary good job of is protecting the quarterback. A lot of times he's back there. It almost looks like a 7-on-7 drill. He's so comfortable back there in the pocket. So if there's any chance that they have, it's can they pressure CJ Stroud? Can they affect his rhythm? Penn State, I thought at times did a pretty good job of that. That's the only way I think that I don't think their secondary matches up very well, obviously, against the Ohio State receivers, but their pass rush does, so that to me will be the big key of the game.
Thanks, Kirk. Appreciate it.
Yep. See you, bud.
You got it.
Thank you, Clay. Sorry about that. All right, let's go to Colin Gay, followed by Nia Hairston. Go ahead, Colin.
Hey, Kirk, you were mentioning about CJ's ability to, you just stand comfortable in the pocket. And one of the things that people have gotten riled up around here is about CJ Stroud's ability to run the ball or their lack of ability. Do you feel like that's holding him back, like in terms of Heisman contention or the way that he's viewed, or how does that kind of play into the factor of what he could do award season? Like how does it affect the way he's viewed nationally?
I don't think it impacts him at all and how he's viewed nationally. I think I go back to Dwayne Haskins. I remember talking to Ryan and Urban about him that year he played. And one of the areas, even late in the year, they said, we're just trying to get him to realize, even though he's a pocket guy, that occasionally we need you to use your feet just to kind of keep plays alive. And whether you scramble for 5 yards on a 3rd and 4, or you're keeping a play alive and you find a receiver and you make a throw, we need you to just keep in mind you're allowed to use your feet. And I think as that year, Maryland and some others late, you start to see a little bit more of that starting to surface. I don't necessarily watch his game and think he is a great basketball player. He's a very talented athlete. But I think he's a little bit more like Dwayne, as we know, than I would say Justin, who is almost like a legitimate dual threat guy. So I think there's some plays to be had with his feet, extending plays, potentially scrambles on 3rd down. But this guy's making a name for himself as a Heisman front runner because of the way he's distributing the football. That's who he is. I mean, that's why he's being recognized and heralded and as a Heisman front runner late in the year. But he's a first-year starter. I think the moments of kind of scrambling to buy time will become more natural to him. And right now, I think he's so focused on who am I going to throw to, that he hasn't necessarily needed to use his legs in his mind. But, I think even in the NFL, you watch an Aaron Rodgers, watch any of these guys, they're pocket quarterbacks, but they use their feet. They use their feet to either get that first down or, like I continue to say, extend. So, yeah, I think that'll naturally happen to him with the more games that he plays and the more reps that he gets. But I don't think it's hurting him from a perception standpoint at all.
Thanks, Kirk.
All right, literal 2-minute offense here. We're going to go the last two questions. Nia Hairston, followed by James Ryder. Go ahead, Nia.
Hi, Kirk. My question for you is, you have so many ties to Columbus. You went to Ohio State. You were also an intern here at WBNS. So what is the meaning of this game for you? I know the big one is next week, but, Michigan State is nothing to sneeze at. So,
yeah, for me, anytime I come back to Columbus, it's huge. I have family in Ohio. I have a lot of my best friends are in Columbus. They're all crazy Ohio State fans. We're going to all go to dinner tonight and hopefully tomorrow. So it's a chance to kind of come back, almost like a reunion of sorts. I think it is, like, for a lot of fans when they maybe get a chance to come back to a home game. So, yeah, I'm not going to ever pretend to say that it's not special. I travel all over the country. We go to these awesome sites. We were at Oxford, Mississippi last week, and I can't remember, we were in LA for a UCLA game. The weeks just kind of are a blur. But anytime we come back to Columbus, of course, it means so much to me on game day. And then to be able to, take the show onto the field as the teams are warming up, and then to go up into the booth and call the game of a team that's ranked in the top 5 in my alma mater against a team that's ranked in the top 7. It never gets lost on me. I remember my WBNS days like they were yesterday, and to be in this position, it's literally a dream for me to be in this spot, and I don't ever take it for granted or ever forget that.
James, really fast to you before Kirk goes.
Kirk, you get to do a lot of really cool things. One of the things is having this platform, and one of the things you got to do was talk about Bob Gregg. What did it mean to you to be able to share a guy that's meant so much to you with an audience that probably has never heard of Bob Gregg before?
Well, I wasn't able to go to the funeral. That really bothered me. I heard that they're going to be doing something in the spring, which would be great. My heart just went out to his family, and to all his friends. And then, of course, all the guys that coached with him and played for him. I just know how he impacted me. I know how he impacted all of my teammates who I'm best friends with to this day. And I know how we were all talking leading up to the week, and how, we knew he was getting older. We knew he lived a great life, but the reality of it, kind of like when my dad died, the reality of it, it just, man, it stings. And I just wanted America to know, both on game day and the game I called, that if you're lucky in life, you have somebody that impacts you the way Coach Gregg impacted me. And he just taught me so much about so many life values that I hold dear to my heart to this day. And I use, and whether it's, something you're, looking at the, type of father you are, or the type of, employee you are, whatever you happen to do, the work ethic, the sacrifice, being a great teammate, being humble, just loving what you do. I saw examples of that from him every day. And so high school football coaches and coaches in general, it's such a rat race to win championships. And if you don't, you're going to get fired. I just wanted to remind coaches that don't forget what it's really about. Don't forget impacting young people and affecting them and the people they become down the road. That's why you got into coaching. And let's not let all this pressure in social media and what have you done for me lately mentality make you lose sight of what you can do and the impact you can make. And I just wanted to remind coaches, and I try to use Coach Gregg in the platform that I had about how he impacted me, and use him as example of coaches and what they can do for so many people.
Kirk, thanks for your time. We really appreciate it.
You got it, guys. Thank you. I appreciate
Thanks,
that talk with so many of you, so many folks. Look forward to hopefully seeing you guys on Saturday.